Hey, thanks for stopping by the Eyes Open Network. I have a special treat for you today. This is one of ours in a series we like to call the Daily Eye Opener. And the reason we call it an eye opener is because when we were first diving in, the creators of the Eyes Open Network, when we were first creating and diving into these off the track kind of things that we had to educate ourselves on, the money system, uh, what's geopolitics, what's actually really going on, the full story, opening our minds, listening to everybody, not just taking the status quo, not just listening to what's being told from us from one source or one source that's owned by many, or many sources owned by the same conglomerate. But just widening a little bit and asking a few more questions. Once we were awakened, um, we kind of like to go back now and to help enlighten you of what's educate you basically and enlighten you and get your eyes open and perhaps allow you to awaken to all the possibilities out there. We've created this series called the Daily Eye Opener, and today's Daily Eye Opener is something very close to my heart because it's something that I'd like to share with you that is basically changed my life in the regards to how safe I feel, how protected I am about my wealth, um, and and many of the viewers of Eyes Open Network maybe care about that too. So is it all doom and gloom? Is bad things going to happen out there? Yeah, but eventually there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and good things are going to start to happen again. But you want to be prepared for that. So back when I was being awakened, I stumbled upon a guy named Chris Dwayne, who's one of my uh, silent mentors, if you will, and I call it silent because I've never met the guy in my life. But he changed my perspective on investing. It changed my perspective on not. I guess I can give him full credit on how I view money, but what I do with my money. Where do I invest it? How do I more importantly, how do I preserve my wealth that you know I'm an entrepreneur, so I've built up a lot, been self-sustaining, and built up my wealth. How do I protect that from it all being taken away from a global financial collapse and a global reset that's actually going to happen? So I put this video together by Chris Dwayne, the 7 reasons you need to be investing in silver. Now I prelude that to also include gold, but Chris gives an awesome argument and explaining the value of silver and a bit of the history. And again, this is just touching on it. So it's to get you to start sparking your your um, your learning drive in your brain to want to look at more and learn more and understand more about this rather than what's being told on us in the schools, in the media, which is to give all the money back to the bankers. And one of the reasons I love silver is it's very inexpensive, but it holds so much potential, and most importantly, as you'll find out through these 7 different reasons by Chris Dwayne, that you'll see many more reasons why silver is a super awesome investment right now. So hopefully you enjoyed today's daily eye opener from the Eyes Open Network. Enjoy.
Infinite money in a finite world. The irresistible force paradox asks, what happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object? Our debt-based monetary system must create more debt each and every year in excess of the debt and interest accrued the year before. The more debt money the bankers create, the more profit they have. The more money debt the politicians spend, the more power they have. This sick symbiotic relationship of lender of last resort meets the spender of last resort ensures exponential growth of money. The elite will keep using the power of the printing press to maintain their power, but ultimately this will only accelerate their demise. There is a mathematical inevitable end to this system, as infinite money debt meets the world's finite resources and ultimately the limits of human faith. The more money and debt chasing after fewer goods and services will cause inflation. Ultimately, people's faith in currency will fail worldwide. It will become evident that the elite intend to print the currency into oblivion, ruining the main function of money as a store of value. When this happens, people will throw their depreciating currency at any tangible asset they can get their hands on. Precious metals will be the main beneficiary of this. The frightening thing is that it's not just American citizens that will be affected by this global destruction of paper currency, because this will be the first time in human history in which the entire world has become interconnected and dependent upon this fiat monetary illusion. Stop thinking about another American Great Depression and start thinking about the Dark Ages. My suggestion would be to beat the rush and panic now. When this current monetary order dies, so will millions if not billions of people as an era of unlimited money comes to an end. Think of the millions that are on food stamps that have no support system to carry them. Think about the billions of dollars in food subsidies ending, food riots, skyrocketing food and fuel prices globally. In this hyperinflationary collapse of the world's money, I predict that up to 90% of your money will go towards food and fuel. Not your mortgage, not your car payments, taxes, tuitions, medical bills, or anything else. Just the basic necessities like food and fuel. Most will not be able to make this transition and unfortunately will die. And that is before the wars, riots, and violence take even more people down. This dramatic shift in life will also prevent people from having children in this turbulence. There will be a scar in the human experience that will be felt for generations. A shift from paper assets to tangible assets. Those that understand that there is a major shift out of paper assets into real assets inevitably start with the gut reaction of buying gold. The more I learned about silver, the more I saw that it was the only investment for me and my family. When you truly understand the fundamentals behind silver, you will see that it's simply the best investment out there. First and foremost, the reason why I invested in physical silver is because it is a physical, tangible asset. When I say invest in silver, I do not mean anything else but the real stuff in your hand. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Stay away from SLV, unallocated bullion accounts, mining shares, and stick to the physical. I would hate for you to be right on silver and wrong on the form of silver. We are entering a generational shift out of paper assets into real tangible assets. As I have stated many times in the past, the dollar is mathematically going to collapse, and it is the very basis for our entire world economy. The dollar collapse will be the single largest event in human history, and will dramatically touch every human being on Earth and will leave a scar on generations to come. Yes, it's going to be that big. When the mathematically inevitable collapse happens, all paper assets will be destroyed. This goes for dollars, yen, euro, CDs, munis, T-bills, money markets, insurance policies, pensions, privately owned businesses, structured settlements, Social Security, dividends, 401ks, IRAs, stocks, options, bonds, and even real estate. Without a functioning currency and the uncertainty it brings, credit grinds to a halt, payments grind to a halt, markets grind to a halt, the world economy grinds to a halt. People panic, and this always leads to war. This naturally leads to investors finding value in real tangible assets like commodities. Commodities are real things that we use every day in our life, like pork, cotton, corn, oil, and steel. The problems with most commodities is storage. I know for a fact that two of the best asset classes to be in terms of real inflation-adjusted returns, will be food and fuel. They are most essential to humanity, and they are hardest to live without. I strongly recommend people stocking up on preparations before they buy silver. You will need at least a 3-month supply of food per person as a buffer for the massive global social upheaval we are going to go through with the collapse of the dollar. The problem with investing in most food and fuel is storage issues. Most food and fuel deteriorates and becomes worthless. Also, storage can be prohibitive because we're talking about some big dollars. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't have a grain silo or storage tanks. Unless you're a farmer or an oil baron, this usually rules out many commodities for the average investor. This brings us to metals because they don't deteriorate. For most metals, storage is a big issue. $8,000 will buy you a ton of copper, but just over 4 ounces of gold. This is why precious metals are sought after, because of their rarity and their ability to store so much wealth in a small space. Silver is the indispensable metal. The first demand is industrial demand. First and foremost, silver is being used as an industrial metal. Silver is the indispensable metal. Next to oil, silver is the most widely used commodity ever, as it has over 10,000 uses. As technology progresses and expands, silver's usefulness will explode even further. Its unique characteristics are unlike any other commodity in the world. It is the most reflective of all metals, the greatest conductor of both heat and electricity, strongly resists corrosion and oxidation, second most malleable and ductile metal next to gold, and it has recently been discovered to be a very effective antimicrobial and bacterial metal, and is now even being used in the war against cancer. Silver is generally used in small quantities, and its unique characteristics make it irreplaceable. This demand is growing and inelastic to price, which provides a very strong base for the next demand to put some more fuel on the fire. The next demand is the growing investment demand. This demand has almost been dead for the past generation of investors. This demand has a Jekyll and Hyde component to it. It has a paper trader component to it that simply wants a horse to bet on. These investors are primarily Anglo-American institutional investors and tend to want the silver price lower. But what they really want is to get big swings in the market. They trade anywhere from 40 to 1,000 paper ounces of silver for every real physical ounce in the market, and they only usually take about 3% of the real physical off the market when it is traded. This institutional demand is still in its early stages and seems content in the paper chase of the trader market. This institutional demand is set to grow not only in acceptance, but in worldwide audience and finally in physical metal. Institutions seem to follow the leader. At first they'll play the paper market, but soon they will want the real thing. Foreign institutional investment demand is quite different than our institutional investment demand. They don't seem interested in playing the paper chase, and they want real physical silver. They seem intent on dumping dollars for real assets. During the last bull run of silver in the 80s, only Western nations participated in that market. Since then, there is 10 to 20 times more capital in the world. There are 50% more people living in the world today, and now all of the world can participate in this silver bull run. China, India, and Russia are leading the charge to buy more and more precious metals. There are a lot of potentially useless dollars floating around the world, and they want real tangible assets in return. This type of foreign institutional investment demand wants higher prices and has the potential for backing the final demand, which will catapult silver into the stratosphere. The final investment demand is private investors. These investors typically want physical and only dabble in the paper trader market. These investors buy and hold, and they differentiate themselves from the other demands that specifically want a higher price for their investment. They plan on dumping their toxic paper assets and getting real physical assets outside of the paper chase. These investors are like ants, constantly taking food off the table and storing it for a rainy day. This demand is joining the industrial demand and taking real physical metal off of the market. But unlike the industrial users, the investment demand of private investors strictly want higher prices. The final and completely absent demand in this world is monetary demand. Silver has absolutely no monetary demand in the world. It is used in things and invested for protection against inflation, but nowhere in the world can you just buy things with it. I believe that with the mathematically inevitable collapse of the worldwide currencies, this new monetary demand will push silver through the sky. Some countries or local communities will monetize silver, and as history has shown, money goes to where it's most appreciated. All of humanity will be crying out for real money as they try to recover from the fiat something-for-nothing dream. How will quadrillions of fiat paper money flow into less than 1 billion ounces of silver? It's impossible. Paper is poverty. It is the ghost of money and not money itself. Thomas Jefferson. I have seen bright and intelligent men fail to understand that the electronic digits in their computer screens are not real money. They always do get it when you hold an ounce of gold or a 100-ounce bar of silver. It's a frightening aspect of our society that we've become so detached from real money that most of us cannot even comprehend real money. Do yourself a favor this week and go to your local coin shop and just touch an ounce of gold or a big fat shiny bar of silver. Then look at that wad of paper in your wallet, or worse, the digits in your bank account, and tell me honestly, where would you rather invest your future? I've told people now, I said, I don't think we're going to see another bull market. I think we're just going to see a defaulted market. I don't know if it's going to go up. I think it's just going to, at one point, failure to delivers, and, we're going to have suspended markets, defaulted markets, and, scramble for whoever's got what. I think that they've structurally damaged the mining industry, the whole kit and caboodle, to the point where, and demand is still going through the roof. That USGS survey that said by 2020 we're going to be out of silver if we continue at this pace. Well, it's gotten worse because now the price of silver is cheaper and we're selling more physical silver than ever before. Silver's price is inelastic. This is what makes its price inelastic. All commodities have a self-correcting price mechanism except for silver. If a commodity's price rises too high, demand drops off as people seek substitutes or supply rises to meet the demand, thus lowering the price. This mechanism does not exist for silver. Silver is typically used in very small quantities and high-tech components, and there is no substitute for it. So a manufacturer or customer will have to absorb any price increase. Silver is now starting to be used in clothing to reduce odors caused by bacteria. What is remarkable about it is that by weight, silver represents only 1/40,000th of the total of inputs on that shirt. When used in such tiny quantities, silver's price is almost irrelevant. Over 20 million tons of polyester sportswear produced every year. The textile industry consumes 1,200 tons of silver annually. That's 38 million ounces. Let's say, for example, the average computer contains 1/10 of an ounce of silver. That would mean that there is about $3 of silver in the computer. Now let's assume the computer in question costs $1,500. If silver were to go to $1,000 an ounce, the same silver in that computer would be $100. Do you think Apple Computer is going to throw its arms up in the air and cry that they can no longer sell computers because silver is too expensive? No, they will raise the price of the computer and probably advertise that it has the most silver in it. Do you think the average consumer is going to say, I would buy a computer at $1,500, but at $1,600, no way? No, they'll find a way to get the extra $100 so they can read the latest online news about Miley Cyrus. It's not just consumer products that are at risk. It's the companies, the industries, the nations that are at risk. Apple has a market cap of $400 billion. If a strategic commodity like silver starts having shortages, their billion-dollar empire is endangered. Companies will go into panic buying, securing any amount of physical silver they can because their entire value-added business is dependent upon it. They will not be buying SLV or certificates of deposits. Only the real physical silver will suffice. They will whip out their huge checkbook and stock up. Now you can see why rising prices actually increase demand. And it's not just the computer industry that's relying upon silver. It's the multi-billion-dollar industries like energy, medical, and the military. And soon the banking industry, as their debt money system collapse. This directly affects national destiny, the value of total energy inputs.
Why is gold worth some $20 an ounce?
I don't know, because it's scarce.
1,000 men say go searching for gold. After 6 months, one of them's lucky. 1 out of the 1,000. His find represents not only his own labor, but that of 999 others to boot. That's 6,000 months or 500 years, scrabbling over mountains, going hungry and thirsty. An ounce of gold, mister, is worth what it is because of the human labor that went into the finding and the getting of it.
Now think about how much energy, labor, ingenuity, and time that goes into finding that silver and refining it.
The mining company produces silver bars, the composition of which is 93 to 97% pure silver. It sells the bars to a refinery, which further purifies them for sale to industries. The action begins down in the mine, where geologists point a niton gun at various spots in the rock face. The device detects the levels of 40 different elements, including silver. Silver in its natural state isn't silver colored at all. It's charcoal gray. Those silver-looking deposits are actually zinc and lead. Miners drill holes in the silver-rich areas the geologists pinpointed, then insert sticks of dynamite. After the blast, carts haul the chunks of rock, called ore, to the surface. Geologists then test ore piles and blend them as required to achieve a consistent amount of silver content per kilogram of ore. The ore first goes into the primary crusher. The machine's huge steel teeth break up the big chunks into smaller pieces. Those pieces then drop through grates below into the secondary crusher, which breaks them down into even smaller pieces. Those go into vibrating cone crushers, which pulverize them into tiny pieces. A conveyor transports the crushed ore to the ball mill. At this point, the ore pieces are roughly 6 millimeters big. As the mill's large cylinder rotates, steel balls bounce around inside, grinding the ore into powder. A water circulation system flushes the silver-rich powder out of the cylinder and into large tanks which keep the water moving. To separate and dissolve the metals the powder contains, workers pour in acid. 72 hours later, the rock waste, now settled at the bottom, the solution containing dissolved silver is pumped through filter presses. The filter plates are treated with a zinc-based chemical which attracts silver molecules. As the solution passes through, the plates trap particles containing silver, forming a layer of black powder called silver precipitate. This precipitate is composed of approximately 50% silver and 50% waste, the waste being a jumble of various metals, dirt, and other impurities. To separate the silver from the waste, they first dry the precipitate in a gas furnace for a couple of hours. In the mining company's lab, technicians continuously test ore samples to determine the grade, the term for the quantity of silver per kilogram of ore. They heat the samples to 1093 degrees Celsius for about an hour to burn off the impurities. What's left after the burn-off are the silver and other metals, such as lead, zinc, copper, selenium, and cadmium. Lab technicians then treat the samples with a chemical that prevents silver from burning off and put them back in the oven. When the samples come out about an hour later, all the other metals have burnt off and only silver is left. They weigh the silver and compare it to the weight of the original sample in order to calculate the grade. The key to running a profitable mine is to ensure that the grade is consistently within certain parameters. Back at the mill, workers put the now dried silver precipitate into an oven, along with chemicals which prevent silver from burning off. Approximately 4 hours later, the silver and waste have separated and melted. Workers pour them into bar-shaped molds. The silver, being heavier, settles at the bottom. Workers skim off the waste floating on top. In less than 5 minutes, the molten silver cools and hardens, enabling workers to extract what is now a silver bar. The mining company sells the bars to a refinery for processing into industrial-grade silver.
It's crazy to think that all those tons of earth were moved just to find 1 ounce of silver, and right now we can buy it all for less than a dinner for 4 at our local sports bar. Silver has no counterparty risk. Silver has another awesome quality. It has a allodial title to it. If you hold it, you own it. Almost every asset you own is controlled by somebody else. If you own your house outright, you still have to pay property tax, which means you really don't own it. Your cars, computers, TVs, and clothes are rendered less valuable with each registration, taxation, new fashion, or planned obsolescence. Even your stocks are not really yours because the actual certificates are being held by the nefarious DTCC. Who knows if they're selling stock that maybe they don't have? Have you ever heard of naked short selling? Silver is without counterparty risk. You do not have to rely upon somebody else fulfilling a promise for your asset to have value. All paper assets have counterparty risk. They use interest rates to value the risk that you might not get your money back. This will become very important as our society collapses and promises are broken by all. When the collapse accelerates, people will do the unspeakable thing as they become more and more desperate. People whom you have relied upon for years will suddenly break faith. This will not only happen on an individual level, but also on a corporate and governmental level. Pensions will be cut, benefits terminated, interest payments not paid. And this is where things get really scary. At this point, we will either see a deflationary crash or hyperinflationary depression. It will be a deflationary crash if there's not enough money to pay the increasing debt and interest. But I believe the elite will pay all the obligations to keep their game going.
Do you still believe that we should maintain the fundamental principles of Social Security as you did in 83?
I think we should maintain the principles of Social Security, but I think the existing structure is not working, and that until we can construct a system which creates the savings that are required to build the real assets so that the retirees have real goods and services, we don't have a system that's working. We have one that basically moves cash around, and we can guarantee cash benefits. It's far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power. And this is why the issue ultimately has got to be resolved in terms of, do we have the material goods and services that people will need to consume, not whether or not we pass some hurdle with respect to how legal financing occurs, because the financing is a secondary issue, and it's the means to create the real wealth, not an end in itself.
This will get every promise paid with toilet paper currency.
Well, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed today's Daily Eye-Opener, and hopefully you're a little bit more awakened to the possibilities of the alternative, I guess if you call them that now, in ways of investing. I guess they shouldn't be called that. There's lots of people investing in bullion around the world. But if you like today's Eye-Opener and you want more things like this that have opened our eyes, enough to create not only to create this channel and create this website and create the Eyes Open Network to be able to give back from what we learned, and to get other people awakened to what we see, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a great source, these daily eye-openers, because instead of trying to do all the research you can, I mean, I spent years and years of doing research myself, which the average person wouldn't have that much time, but because of the luxury of me being financially independent, and because of my entrepreneurship types of businesses that I've created, it has allowed me to do that research for you, and now I'm trying to give it back in a bundled format. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you get a lot more from our daily eye openers, plus the daily news, and of course we encourage you to leave a comment behind, like the video, share it with other people, check out our social media if you feel that you want to get more information from us. Thanks again for stopping by the Daily Eye Opener, and thanks again for tuning in to the Eyes Open Network.